Hello and welcome to this very special video. My name's Maggie, I'm a vet and I work for Cats Protection, which is the UK's leading feline welfare charity. I'm delighted to be joined today by a very special cat-loving guest who's here to talk about his affinity with cats and also his latest children's book, Toto the Ninja Cat and the Mystery Jewel Thief, which is based on his very own rescue cats. So Dermot O'Leary, TV presenter and cat and children's author, welcome and thank you so much for joining us at Cats.
Thank you for having me, Maggie.
Good. Well, for those that may not know, your Toto the Ninja Cat books are based on two of your own cats. So would you like to tell us a little bit about Toto and Silver and how you came to get them in your life?
Of course. I mean, a very strange set of circumstances, if I'm honest with you. So we had, we're on a holiday in Italy, in Puglia, right in the heel of Italy. And there's loads of stray dogs and cats, mostly stray dogs down there. And a lot of them are kind of quite well looked after, to be honest with you. They're kind of farm cats and
sort of community cats.
Exactly, yeah. So and there's this wonderful cat that started hanging around our villa called Plaxi, and she was kind of wild but not feral because she was very good around people. And it being the countryside, we thought, well, yeah, if we've got cats, then it means we don't have rats, and we both really love cats anyway. So we indulged her and we started, feeding her and stuff. And anyway, I came back a day early for work, and my wife just texted me that night and just, I think she Skyped and she just said, listen, she's having her kittens in our room. So in my pillowcase, she was having her kittens in my wife's pillowcase. And we were going to get a dog that year. I mean, we both love cats and dogs equally, but we just thought, well, that's a message. So we are 100% all in. So we took two, and our friends looked after them over there and got them injections. And then we flew them back, and a neighbor of ours took two over there, and that was it. And Toto and Silver have been with us ever since. Now, sadly, Silver passed away. He died quite young, which we think actually Plaxi might have, because Plaxi disappeared and we never saw her again when we went back. And we think that he might have got it from her, because I mean, you'll tell me, it might be hereditary. He died of a sort of saddle thrombus. So there's usually underlying heart disease, so we think there is a genetic component. So but luckily, touch wood, up to now, Toto doesn't appear to have any of that. So it's so sad though, isn't it, when you lose a cat? Honestly, the grief is just, it sideswipes you. And actually, knowing his life was going to be cut short was worse than when he died. Actually, it's that message that you get. It was at 4 o'clock. I mean, I feel like welling up talking about it now. It was at 4 in the morning, and we thought he'd been run over, and we've got very good vets near us, so we took him there. 24-hour care, and they told us that they'd explain what this condition was. And then but luckily they called him the Christmas miracle, because he came back and he was, then we get these updates every day. We'd sort of bring in food for him and so forth, and blankets and whatnot, and they get these updates every day that he'd he had pain sensation and pulse in his joints,
in his
back.
back
And then
legs,
we had him for another 6 months, and we don't feel bad about that at all, because he had a great 6 months of a worthwhile life, and then we were able to put him to sleep here in our house, and Toto was with him, and so we had great memories. And now he has and now we have a little, well, now he's about 3, so a little rescue cat, which was a kitten, we were going to leave it for a while, and then I remember my wife, we were online looking, and we just thought, well, this is silly, let's take our time a little bit. It was we'd grieved. It was about three months down the line, and we just thought, well, okay, let's start looking. Maybe we'll get one next year. And my wife found a kitten called Bronze on a rescue site. I think it's Battersea, and then or our RSPA rescue site. And because it was silver and bronze, we thought, this is it. And Bronze sadly had gone. And then so I remember sending an email, or my wife sent an email to Battersea saying, listen, we're going to leave it for a few months. And then at the end, she just said, unless there's a cat you think might be suitable for us. So why did you say that? Because of course there's a cat that's going to be suitable.
Absolutely.
So we went to go and see Socks, who was at the time, I think he was only 8 weeks when we saw him, so he'd already been given up once, 8 weeks, which was fascinating, because I don't think he was stray. And then and then we waited for him to get all his, become the right age,
Yeah.
get all his inoculations and whatnot. And then he's been with us ever since. And he is a live wire. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But he's 3 now, so he's just starting to kind of calm down. And
Yeah.
I mean, he's very
Mature.
cuddly, very friendly. But I can't imagine life without cats now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I very sadly lost one of my cats at the beginning of lockdown. And I had him and his brother from 5-week-old kittens. They were dumped in a bin and handed into my practice. I was in private practice at the time. So, of course, I ended up taking them home. And I had him for 17 years, Frankie. So I do appreciate it. It's really horrible.
Oh, it's the worst, Maggie, isn't it?
It is. But at Cats Protection, we do have a helpline for people if they are grieving for their cat.
Oh, that's good.
Called Pause to Listen, so people can phone. It's confidential and it gives them sort of practical and support.
I think you've got to reconcile it with the fact it's the contract we all sign on our, you know that one day all that love and all that great relationship you have with any animal will end with the chances are they will pass before you do.
Yeah.
And you have to, you have to go through that grief, but that's a small price to pay for the love that you've given and the love you get.
Oh, absolutely. So yes, I'd lost his brother a couple of years before, so I now have 2 new brothers. So I have Ross and Aidan now, who are fantastic from obviously Cats Protection. But anyway, when did you realise that Toto was a ninja and that you had to write about her?
Well, this is interesting because when they came over here, which is probably 8 years ago this year, in July. Silver was always he was the Tom, and he was always the more kind of outgoing, I suppose, of the 2. And Toto we think Toto was the runt, so Toto was actually probably a third smaller than Silver and far more cautious. But then my wife, about a few months down the line, just said, I think she might have seeing difficulties, and obviously being a cat dad, go no, she's fine. And we noticed that she was bumping into stuff, and so we took her to the vet, and he said, she's got, we don't know why or how, she has probably 5% vision maybe. So he described it as there's it's like there's a camera with no film, but it's funny, a couple of elderly relatives said, "Oh, you're going to get her put down," and we were just like, "Of course not. No, she's safe and she's secure in her house, and she's going to have a really lovely, fulfilled life." So,
yes, absolutely.
I haven't seen her all day today, so she loves a snooze. So we sort of then just started, like anything, if this through circumstance, you start to work out how you live your life around that. So we started to research it, and actually sight's only a sense, a very important sense. It's only one sense for cats, and obviously the sense of smell and through the whiskers and the hearing is just so attuned that they can live a really fulfilled life. And and so but because she has about 5% vision, what she does see is I'm looking at my garden, that breaks in light. So if she's in the garden rolling around and a bird flies over on a sunny day like today, she'll suddenly look up, she'll hear it, or she'll see it. And we started calling her the little ninja, and then that's where the idea came from. And I thought, well, this is hang on a second, I love the idea of personifying her and creating a different world full of animals. And so so Toto the Ninja Cat was born. So she is officially a cat ninja. She works for Larry, the 10,000 cat. He's the boss of the UK branch of the Ancient Order of International Cat Ninjas. And they're there to just make sure that humans don't do anything stupid. So so every world leader has a pet, but every world leader is working with the Ancient Order of the International Ninja Cats to make sure that the world leaders don't do anything, don't push any buttons they shouldn't be pushing. And they do this through the mantra of purrs, paws, and claws. So purrs, calm them down. If that doesn't work, pause. If that doesn't work, pause.
Brilliant. And I mean, it just really goes to show that cats are so adaptable, aren't they? That even being blind, she has a fantastic quality of life. And to deaf, or we have a few that have got 3 legs, perhaps after an argument with a car, but actually they don't have the worries we have about thinking they're disabled, and so actually they adapt remarkably well. And because their balance and their other senses are so good, they cope so well. So we home a lot of cats with those sort of
Oh, that's good.
perceived as disabilities, but actually they're absolutely fine. Anyway, so did you want to be a writer when you were a child? And is it true that you used to make your own handmade books when you were
True, yeah. I always, I think what I love about my job is, and it must be like your job in many ways, is that no two days are the same.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
And that's always really appealed to me and attracted me about working in television and radio and writing. And I always wanted to write, but never found the time. And then I used to write when I was really little. My dad brought home a computer. He worked for British Telecom, and he brought home one of the early Macs. Actually, it was quite a small thing, but it was just you could go on it and make shapes and so forth. But it meant that he had paper and a printer. So I readily endorsed this. So I had this. So I had my raw materials, as it were. So I used to write detective fiction, and then photocopy it, and then sell it in our estate for 5p. I'm not much of an entrepreneur, but I used to love going around and knocking on doors and like, this is what I've written.
Yeah.
Buy a copy of it. So
fantastic.
It was a lot of fun. But I've always loved it, and I've always loved words, and I've always loved reading. So my parents read to me a lot when I was a kid. And I used to go to the library a lot with my dad on a Saturday when my mum was working. And then we had a mobile library as well, which came to our village. I grew up, my parents came over here from Ireland in the late 60s, and then we moved out to Colchester when I was born, in sort of North Essex, the North Essex sort of Suffolk borders. And that's a really lovely town, very kind of lovely countryside near there. And I grew up in a little village near there. So I was sort of half like every second week I'd be in London, and then most of my life which was quite Irish, and then the other part of my life was growing up in this kind of rural ideal, really. So it's
lovely.
It was a very lovely.
And which were your favourite books when you were a child, and your favourite authors?
Well, my dad used to tell me a lot of Irish fairy stories, so he'd be one of them. I don't think he wrote them. He writes some stuff for my son Casper now, and my niece Josette, who's now 13, but when she was younger he used to write loads of stuff, which is really sweet. Then it sort of Raymond Briggs when I sort of got to kind of I guess kind of there'd be picture books more than chapter books, wouldn't they? And then as I got older, Roald Dahl, obviously, Fantastic Mr. Fox was my favorite book growing up. And then I really got into, when I was a teenager, the long car journeys and so forth. I really got into those sort of fighting fantasy books that were you could just lose yourself in for half a day. They were so wonderful, and they were conjured your imagination so brilliantly that But it's always been reading and books have always been a huge part of my life.
Oh, brilliant. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your latest book, Toto the Ninja Cat?
I will, absolutely. So this is now my fourth, and let me get a copy of it. This is now my fourth, and it's Toto's kind of, but now her brothers, Silver and Socks, are kind of, they're part of the ninja scene, as it were. Her boss is Larry the 10 Downing Street Cat. Her best friend is a cross-species rat who lives his life like a cat, because everyone thinks he's a cat. His real name is Alexander Rathenoff, but his nickname is Catface, and he's the most popular cat rat in town. If you can imagine a cross between Stephen Fry and Richard E. Grant, that's kind of that's the vibe they're going. So they've had a few adventures by now. When in the first book, they come to London, and Toto is a ninja, but she doesn't know why she's here. She's just been adopted by me and my wife, and they meet Catface on the first night they're here, and the King Cobra escapes from London Zoo, which we're around the corner from, and it's the most venomous snake in the whole of London. So the animal population think they're going to get decimated, so Toto has to go to the rescue. In the second book, every piece of cheese gets stolen. It's her first official ninja mission on the eve of an international peace conference, both for animals and for humans. This is a catastrophe, so she has to go and track down the cheese. The third book, they go into the annual Animal Music Festival of Catstonbury. That's called the Superstar Catastrophe, and they think they're going to have a weekend off, but it doesn't work out like that. And in the fourth book, the French ambassador, Monsieur Raton Laveur, comes over from France, and he insists on seeing the animal crown jewels. So Toto is part of the security detail to look after it. Now, the crown jewels get stolen No one's entirely sure why. But so Wigbert Fluffy Paws III, who is the cat home secretary, goes mad, who hates the ninjas, blames Larry. Larry gets framed for the crime. So Toto then has to find the crown jewels and prove Larry's innocence. So there we go. And I work with this incredible illustrator called Nick East, who's become a very dear friend who I love. And Nick, I'm a terrible drawer, and Nick illustrator, and Nick just brings so much to life.
They are great pictures.
Yeah, he's wonderful. He really
so
is.
Has Nick actually come over and met Toto?
Yeah, sadly not for a while, but he came and met them when we first had them for the first book, and sadly he hasn't seen them since then. But he's such a nice guy. Brilliant. Hilariously, when he first came to meet them, no, this is before he came to meet them. We sent him pictures, and he was doing pictures of sketches of Toto, and we kept sitting. Me and my wife kept looking, going, because Toto's quite a big cat. She's not fat, but she's kind of quite broad. She's quite stocky. Whereas Silver was always very lithe. Yeah. And he kept drawing Toto quite svelte. We were like, well, she's not svelte. And he got the wrong cat, so he was actually drawing Silver, and it took us a conversation on the phone to work out that he'd been drawing the wrong cat for the last month.
And so are some of the characters based on real people when you were mentioning Stephen Fry?
Pretty much all. I mean, Catface is the only character that's completely conjured up in my mind. And I just wanted, because they're kind of a love letter to London books, and I just wanted a character that kind of summed up the quintessential Londoner. So he is, like I say, he's part my friend Ollie, who's born and bred Londoner, who is just the best company, the loveliest man, and part Richard E. Grant and part Stephen Fry. So he's kind of a dandy about town, but he's done everything. He's rat royalty, but he's very much an everyman. He loves cats, he loves rats. He for example, in this book, he tries to defend Larry in the animal court run by the corgis at Buckingham Palace, and he has done his law degree, but gave up during the last week so he could go to Brazil on a corned beef boat. So he's not officially qualified, which is obviously.
So, what is it that you love about cats so much? Because it's obvious that you're a really big cat lover.
Yeah, do you know, it's funny. I think I love dogs, so I never kind of get involved with the dog-cat debate, because for me that they're I mean, there's far more similarities than you think between cats and dogs, I think, because dogs do, and you'll correct me because you're a vet, but dogs do. Dogs are far more social, and there's eye contact, and all of those things, and I get all of that. But cats, people that don't have cats don't realise how social cats are. Cats are far more family orientated than you give them credit for, because they don't show it like dogs. You don't think they are, but actually, I mean, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but when a cat comes and sits next to you and looks that way, away from you, that's the greatest sign of trust a cat can show you.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing about cats is that they like choice. So if they choose to come and interact with you, that's fine. They don't like things being imposed upon them. And it does depend on what happened when they were a small kitten. That can be handled a bit. But I think dogs are much more like people than cats are because of that.
Definitely. Cats do. I love the fact they kind of walk to the beat of their own drum. Yeah. And I've always wanted a dog. I've never had a dog. I've always wanted a dog. I've always loved dogs. But I think if you're a busy person, a cat is absolutely the right pet for you, because it's just the right combination of they're part of your family, but they sleep an awful lot. They want your company, but they want your company on their terms. Yeah. And I always say the difference between a dog and a cat is, if you leave a dog in the house for 5 hours or something, you come back and it's just an absolute catastrophe. It's like, why would you leave me? I thought you loved me. Like, I thought we were a team. Whereas, I remember sometimes we're out all day, pre-lockdown, we've been out all day, and you think, I better get back because the cats, and you walk in and they're like, hey, have you been out? They sort of give you that look as if they go.
I know. There is a saying that dogs come when you call them, but a cat says, leave a message and I'll get back to you. absolutely it, isn't it? So,
and they're so enigmatic, because I think people that don't know cats don't appreciate that. They hear all this and they go, well, that's not the pet for me, because they're quite aloof. But they're incredible. They are incredibly affectionate. They're just incredibly affectionate in the way a cat is affectionate. And I think there's something, the fact that a cat's never really been domesticated, the fact that dogs are properly man's best friend, you train a dog, whereas cats kind of are more companions, aren't they? They've got their own life, and they live with you, and they love you, all of that. But they need to go out and do their own thing as well, even if that's just in the back garden.
Absolutely, because they sort of chose to come into people's lives. We didn't selectively breed them in the way that we did. So if anyone who's watching the video wants to learn more about cats, we do have some really good Moggy modules on our website, and they cover all sorts of topics about why cats do what they do. And obviously, as a vet, I know there's always more to learn. They are quite a mysterious creature, and they don't have straightforward illnesses like dogs do. So there's always more to learn. So I think they're really, really fascinating. So a couple of weeks ago, we asked our followers to send in their questions. So we've had loads of them, but we'll ask a couple of them.
Sure.
So the first one is from Stanley, who is 8, and he wants to know how you came up with the names for your cats.
Well, thank you, Stanley. Thanks for your question. And weirdly, I don't get asked this an awful lot. So we had the first cat born was Silver, and he came out with a kind of flash of silver hair. So my wife's mother's maiden name is Silverthorn, and so it was immediately, he was going to be called Silverthorn. There's a long name, and then Silver, and then he just became Silver. But we were convinced that he was a she. We had no reason to be, we didn't know this, it only just been born, so we couldn't tell.
And they're very tiny.
Right, so we were convinced he was a she and Toto was a boy. Now we were in Italy, so our friends over there said, what's a great like traditional Italian name? And my friend Paolo said, well, our Charlie Chaplin is an old actor called, I forget the exact name, but it's called Salvatore. And I thought, Salvatore is a lovely name, but they shortened Salvatore to Toto. So Toto is actually a man's name. And then obviously what happened. So we got them checked. When we got them checked out, we realized he was actually a she, but by then the name had stuck. So
absolutely. It happens an awful lot. When I was in practice, we had quite a few, like, male Shebas and all that sort of thing. And so just respond.
Exactly. And then with Socks just came with his name. So there was a moment where we thought we might change his name to Mackerel, because he has these great kind of tiger-like mackerel stripes on his back, like a fish. But by then Socks had stuck. So I know it's not an original name, but because, so many cats have Socks, but it's still a great name.
I'm sure it suits him. So anyway, the next question comes from Woody and James, and they want to know what makes cats good ninjas, and do they need any special training?
Well, I think it's a good question, boys. Well, I think cats are sort of tailor-made to be ninjas, because they are svelte-like and they're stealthy, and you don't hear them coming. I mean, one of the reasons we call Toto the little ninja, and we call it, one of the other nicknames is Stealth Cat, because you would turn around and she'd just sat there looking at you, and you're like, where did you just turn up from? Dogs will always announce themselves. You'll hear that kind of scrabbly pause, whereas cats they sneak up on you so very well. That said, Toto's an incredible ninja, both in life and in the books, whereas the boys are a little bit more clumsy, so they desperately need more training. So yes, cats definitely can be trained.
Yes, they can, absolutely. And finally, from Tracy, we've got another question who asks, what is your favourite cat fact?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but my favourite cat fact, if it is true, is the show of love is when a cat blinks at you really slowly. Or show of trust.
Yes.
So, and I talk to, when we do school tours, I talk about this a lot. So when people think cats are being unfriendly, cats are actually being friendly. I think that's why apparently a lot of non-cat people, when they go to a house and ignore a cat, the cat will immediately go, great, you're ignoring me. Nothing to fear from you. So now I'm going to give you loads of attention because I'm not fearful of you at all. So quite often when a cat comes and sits next to you but looks that way, that's the ultimate sign of trust, because the cat's going, I know you're not going to attack me, so I feel fine about looking this way. You've got that way covered, so we're all fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And similarly,
Absolutely.
the vet told us when we first got them to blink really slowly to them.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
if you shut your eyes, that's the sign of I trust that you're not going to attack me, right?
Yeah, and often just having your head quite low when you do it as well, so it's not threatening. Because if people are very overt with cats, and obviously, you know, when I was a child and loved cats, I'd be too much in their face, and then our cat that we had then, Candy, would go and sit on my dad's knee because he didn't sort of entice her, whereas we wanted to dress her up in bonnets and all inappropriate.
So you should lower, what you're saying, Maggie, you should lower your head like that.
Yes, well, just so that, but also when you're blinking, so they can still see your eyes, but you're doing your slow blink with a slightly lowered head.
Okay.
And then often the cat will blink back at you if you look carefully. And that is a sign of affection.
Should you get down to their level or not?
It doesn't matter because either at their level or from above, but obviously not towering over them because that's threatening. They prefer to be a bit higher up because in the wild that would make them feel a bit safer. So
you broke up with me there. You say that's a sign of affection and trust, is it?
Yes, yeah. If they blink back, that's a positive sign. So, and sometimes you have to do it a few times, and then you'll notice that they'll do it.
What I've fallen foul of a couple of times is when they show you their belly, and you're like, "Well, you obviously want me to scratch your belly." And Silver loved his belly getting scratched. The other two not so much. Toto's not bad with it, but she's long haired, so she'll get quite knotted. So you're trying to groom her, which is like so frustrating because you can groom her and then she'll just be like, all right, here I come. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, I was going to say one of my favorite cat facts, I've got loads, but obviously we know that cats can retract their claws, obviously so that when they're hunting they're silent, and also to sort of sheathe their claws to keep them nice and sharp. But there is a species of cat who doesn't retract their claws, and that's the cheetah. Because the cheetah sprints, they actually need the traction. So it's almost like having running spikes. So it's a good quiz question.
Yeah, very good.
I do a lot of quizzes at work, and I'll often put up a sort of paw print of a cat that has little nail marks and say, what's that? So that's a good cat fact.
Yeah, brilliant.
So I think we've sadly come to the end of our time. I'd like to thank everyone for watching today, but also to thank you, Dermot, for being so engaged.
My pleasure. No, don't be silly. I really enjoyed it.
So thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Wish you success with the books and best wishes to Toto and Socks.
And best of luck with cat protection. You guys do great work. So
thank you. Thank you.